Welcome back to Westmoreland on the Gridiron. Sean Meyers now joined by Matt Humbert, the head coach of the Belle Vernon area Leopards. And Matt, first off, I know that you had a thrilling victory against McKeesport last week, a game that went to overtime, got a lot of attention, maybe the best game in across the entire WPIAL. To get the win this time after falling short against the Tigers last year, how exciting was that for you and for the entire team?
It was gratifying for sure. There's a lot of storylines at play with that. I think the loss last year was really evident. And I think, our performance against McKeesport, 2 out of the past 3 years has been very successful. So I feel that, the kids and probably the coaches were a little more motivated than ever to go out there and battle McKeesport. And that's always a game that requires so much focus and attention because of what they do in their style. And then you mix in their physicalness. It's just a very tough football game to prepare for. It's a stressful week. So I think the gratification is just being able to get the win from a very stressful situation and a very stressful 6 days.
And so you get the win in overtime. And of course, people look, well, how did it end? Braden Locks gets a touchdown for your team, and then you get the stop on 4th down. But to even get to overtime, you needed a goal line stand in the 4th quarter. What stood out about that performance of your defense in particular on that sequence?
Well, I think it's one of those things where I don't know if one thing necessarily stood out. I don't think that when you sit down and you're going through it in real time or you recap it post time, I don't really think there's something that stands out. I think it's just more of, it's kind of a comfort level. When we get in that situation, we don't really blink. And McKeesport's tough. We felt stout against them, but the problem is you could be stout against them 2 out of 3 snaps. That third one, they can hit for 10, if not 20, 30 yards. So, going into overtime, it's one of those games where it kind of worked out well because, the overtime situation period that we had on Thursday in a practice prep, those were the plays that we obviously went with, and they worked obviously for us. And we were trying to, get Quentin out on the perimeter. We were trying to spread them out, and Braden had the option that he could either pitch the ball to the perimeter or he could run it himself. So he made 2 wise decisions by calling his number both times. And then again, defensively, we felt like, we could be stout in terms of stopping them. However, they can sting you. So I think confidence and comfort kind of were at the forefront because we've been there. This isn't anything new for us.
Yeah, certainly. I think back to the state championship game and needing a goal line stand in that game to preserve the victory. I know Alonzo Wade sort of had a breakout performance, and you credited him afterwards, thought it was sort of a star in the making type performance. But that happens over the course of a long time. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. What have you seen from him that led him to have that breakout moment?
In terms of Anthony Cruz?
Oh, my mistake. Yes, Anthony Cruz.
Okay. So Anthony, he was a guy that last year, he was in the mix from day one, but never really kind of did anything to separate himself. And then an injury happened, I want to say about week 6 or week 5, and that propelled him into a role, and he kind of took the bull by the horns and ran with it. Wasn't perfect, had a little hiccups here and there, but always battled back, always fought strong. I think one of the things, he returned a kick in the Central Martinsburg game for 6 points, a kick return, and that kind of really showed like this kid has some game speed. You see the speed in practice, but sometimes kids have a different level when it comes to a Friday night. And so we saw that. And then really the thing that kind of popped to me was his 7-on-7 resume in the month of April. We started our 7-on-7 stuff a little earlier than usual. We had 3 in April. And the way he performed and competed, I kind of knew, he's going to be a guy. So everything's trended in the right direction for him. It's just a matter of fitting him in where we fit him in and trying to keep defense is balanced by Quentin on one side and Cruz on the other, and Jetico and Braden in the backfield. So it's a nice recipe, and we're hoping just to continue getting better at it.
And I'm sure people look at the performance that Quentin Martin had, and they see not a ton of yards in terms of his performance. But I know you said going back to the state semifinals game last year, if that's what the defense dictates, then you're willing to go to other guys because you have faith in them, including guys, of course, like Cruz. But is there a difficult balance between we don't want to force something to him, but by the same token, we do want to see, even if the defense is trying to slow him down, he's the most talented player in the field, can he still break one?
Yes and no. I mean, I think the problem really was our offensive lack of productivity. I don't think it was really a Quentin thing. I mean, when Quentin got the ball in his hands, he did well with it, especially with some of our expansion screens and things of that nature. And, he caught that vertical down going into the end zone opposite the scoreboard side, and that 1 foot was out. And that was kind of a questionable visual if he was actually in or not. So if he catches that, then everything's good in that realm. So I don't necessarily think it wasn't that he wasn't productive on Friday. I just think that offensively we kind of sputtered and never really were able to get to a rhythm. The second quarter and the third quarter, we had 5 penalties, and our goal was always to win the penalty battle, and we didn't. So I think we kind of sputtered, and we were in long situations. A few drives, 3 drives, we were in second and 20 plus. So I just think that it was one of those things where we were never comfortable enough, and we were behind the sticks, that we weren't able to really get in a mode of getting him running downhill and doing things of that nature. So we're hoping this week we kind of get back to normal, and we're hoping that we kind of replicate the first and second drive that we had versus McKeesport in terms of, execution and precision, because we kind of got a little sloppy in the second and third quarter.
And in transitioning to looking ahead at Penn Trafford, you mentioned McKeesport, incredibly physical. I think that's usually a staple of Penn Trafford. Everyone knows they have some massive players in the trenches. And then Thomas Jefferson, the first thing you think of is physicality. I know that you've wanted to test your team with a very rigorous non-conference, but is there also a concern that you're playing such physical teams that it could also wear down some of your players for the conference season that's to come?
It doesn't, because, we feel that, our goal is always to wear down teams in the fourth quarter. I had a couple linemen come over to me in the fourth, and they said, "Coach, they're getting tired. They're getting tired." And that's obviously what we want. It's like yesterday, we beat McKeesport in a great victory, back against the wall, goal line, overtime situation. We were brutal on the kids yesterday. I mean, we ran them a lot and things of that nature. I mean, that's part of the game. Your goal and your game plan and your strategy is to be able to produce in the fourth quarter and not get tired and not get exhausted. So, I think these are all games that really challenge and test that early on. And I think that, if you can come away with what you're supposed to, it just makes you tougher and makes you stronger. So the physical component is something that we look for. We don't necessarily kind of calculate the risk involved in it. So to answer your question, we think the physical games actually help in the long run, opposed to, being a negative factor.
Penn Trafford certainly brings that, the opposition for this week. And I know that they got off to an uncharacteristically rough start, dropping their first 2 games, but they had a big bounce back against Woodland Hills. And certainly Tasso Whipple was a big part of that, over 200 yards rushing. When you look at them through 3 games, what do you see?
I see a characteristic Penn Trafford Warrior football team. Very well coached, very disciplined, an extremely well-run program from an efficiency standpoint, big, physical, and kids that are hard-nosed. I mean, I think that's kind of the brand that Penn Trafford has had, and I think that that's something that is evident on film. So the physical play is definitely there, and I think us playing McKeesport benefits us in the regards that we know what that physicality is like, and it's not that we are benign to it, but you get to just see another team that has that same type of brand, and there's no rest. So the kids need to be on their toes, and the kids need to get ready for a slugfest, because it should be a good one.
I remember back to last year's game, low scoring, tightly contested. A late turnover proved the difference in allowing Penn Trafford to get that victory. Do you think back to that game and see that this year's game could be a similar style of play?
Yeah, I think there's similarities for sure, and I think there's differences. I think one thing is, even with the success we had last year, I think McKeesport and Penn Trafford are probably talked about more than Avonworth and Newman Goretti, and I think that's just the way the football is, right? The wins kind of stick with, or the losses kind of stick with you a little bit more than the wins. So, we're not going to put the cart before the horse. We know we got an all-day sandwich coming up Friday, but we're eager to get back and try to get that bad taste out of our mouth, and we're going to have to climb a mountain to get that bad taste out of our mouth. But they're talented. Got a lot of kids. They are very characteristic to what they've been in the past, and it'll be a big challenge for us Friday night. But I'd like to think that we don't get the credit for our physicality as well. I think sometimes when you look at us, especially our linebacking core inside, we're lean. We're not big. But those kids are tough as nails. I mean, look at a kid like Moody. I mean, Moody has 20 plus tackles already after 2 games. And he is a $150, $160, and he's just quick and fast. So, I think that people would agree that we're a physical style football team. We're just not the biggest bodies that are embracing that physicality.
Biggest keys to victory against Penn Trafford?
Don't turn over the ball. And I know that's cliche, but again, I mean, it can kind of really be translatable. And we felt like last year that was our demise. I also think that a key for us is we can't allow Penn Trafford to have drives. I mean, there's times last year where they were just cranking out drives. I remember the one time that they had a 4th and 3 on their 28, and they went for it. It proved to be beneficial because they were able to get 5 yards for a first down. So we defensively, we can't allow them to extend the drive on 4th downs. And they did that a few times last year. And offensively, we got to be productive. We got to play without penalties and mistakes, and we got to take the ball and methodically drive it. And I think we started off that way last week, and we just didn't really end up that way last week. So we have to win the battle of the possession on offense, and defensively, we can't, allow them to be able to progress the downs past 4th.
Lastly, I know I asked you this before the season. You're a couple weeks in now. As the defending WPIAL and state champions, there's obviously a lot more pressure. There's even bigger target. Penn Trafford went through this last year after they won the state title in 2021. How have the players so far responded to it, and is it something that they're embracing?
It's just one of those things where it's a daily mission for me to get them to forget it. You can't live in the past. And I think there's so many good, examples out there and literature of teams getting caught up in it and living on it too much. And we've already flipped that page, and that page is now etched in history, and we don't need to look back at the history book. So I think the kids handle it well. I think the coaches do a good job of constantly reminding them to progress and not look backwards. So I think we handle it well, and hopefully we'll show that on Friday.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it, and good luck.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
That's Matt Humbert. We'll continue right here on Westmoreland on the Gridiron.